Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Forward Thinking Podcast. It's Chrissy here from CS2. Today we have two guests on. I'm really excited. We're going to be talking about the Mops and Sops power couple. For those of you who don't know what Mops and Sops is, it's marketing ops and sales ops. But I feel like for everyone who listens, you should already know that. So we have two awesome guests who actually work together at the same company. So we have Veronica Lazarovici, who's the marketing ops lead, and then Doris, who's the director of sales ops, and they both work at Alma. So I'm super excited to have them on today to talk about how Mops and Sops can really work together to just drive change and work harmoniously, which can sometimes be a challenge. So thank you both for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having
Thanks
us.
for having us.
Yeah. I said mops and socks, which is actually pretty funny. I'm like, is that a mom like brain slip? You just think about like laundry and cleaning.
We can make it work. I like it.
Well, so we always start the podcast to kind of get a little bit of an origin story. Most people fell into this role. So just want to have you both kind of discuss how you got into marketing ops or sales ops. So Veronica, I'll let you start first.
Awesome. Thank you, Chrissy. So I have been in the marketing ops space for about 7 years now, moving from startup to enterprise, and now I'm back to startup. I'm based in Spain, so living in the future, 6 hours ahead of Doris, and I think we've been working together for more than a year. And I started in Mops, like most of the people who start in Mops by accident. I was working with ad networks and audiences at a company when they onboarded Marketo. And I remember everyone being so excited of all the things we could do now with Marketo. And my manager showed me the tool thinking that I would be good at it. And at core, I was doing the same work. So building segmentation, creating audiences, just not in Facebook or LinkedIn, but in Marketo. And then I soon learned how powerful Marketo is. I went on and became certified, became admin of that instance. And later I became Marketo champion. Just recently, Alma won the Adobe Experience Maker Award.
So nice. Congratulations.
Thank you. I like to think that, or maybe it's a joke I like to tell, that I didn't choose this path, but it chose me.
Yeah, as it does for I think a lot of people. What about you, Doris?
Yeah, for me, it's similarly in a sense where it was not a direct journey to sales ops. I studied finance and marketing in my undergrad.
Okay.
And from there, we never heard of sales ops. And at that time, there was very few tech companies recruiting on campus. So I chose a start to my career that was like as broad as possible. So I started out doing management consulting just to get that breadth of experience. And that's where I started to learn more about what excites me to come to work every day and like what problem space I like to be working in. And that's how I found the operations space. And because it was project based, I was able to gain exposure to like many different areas of operation, be it finance, accounting, fulfillment, legal ops, people ops, and as well as sales. But after some time, I realized consulting wasn't for me. I wanted to join a company where I can like roll up my sleeves and like build things and like see that direct impact that I wasn't able to get from my consulting experience. So it was about that time where a lot of my peers, a lot of my friends, they were joining startups, and I'm like, that is so cool. So I wanted to join a startup too. But I wanted to get this startup experience, but I'm also quite risk averse. So I was thinking about finding that great balance and join a Series C startup. So like C is a good in between on getting that early stage experience, but also it's like has a good foundation.
Yeah, they have money for tech, or they might already have the tech in place. You don't have to like
Exactly.
work through Google Docs or something.
Still some Google Docs.
Still some, but
right.
you're not managing your CRM maybe in one.
Yes, no post-it management CRMs, definitely not. So that's kind of like where I found that balance, and I was able to get that whole startup experience. There were some acquisitions, divestitures, some major reorgs, and which led to a major reorg that happened right before the pandemic started, leading to a couple of layoffs. And that's when I was maybe overcorrecting, like, let me go join a larger company again. But anyways, it came back full circle and join a startup, which is at Alma. But it was that first startup experience where I gained that first exposure to sales ops. And we called it revenue ops at that time. And there I was working on the Salesforce instance, working with Salesforce data as well as other growth data, and helping out our sales and marketing teams achieve their goal there. And that's when I realized I like sales ops because it is the intersection of all the operations problem set that I like. I like working on growth problems and also love working with data. So I felt that like sales ops was for me once I like found out what that team was called.
Yeah. I think that's so funny. Like once I figured out what that team was called, because I think for a lot of people, they're like, well, it happens a lot. I mean, my last week's podcast, I was talking to the CEO of Highway Education. We were just talking about how undergrads and stuff, like you just don't even learn about marketing ops or sales ops. And I even studied marketing, and we never was mentioned, right? And so it takes kind of going into a certain space, like the B2B tech space, or even for you, Veronica, was like, oh, hey, like we have this tool, I think you'd be good at it. Like that's kind of at people's foray. It's either through a tool or, really just understanding, oh, hey, that team's actually an intersection of the things I like, with data, but also strategy and supporting people. And so I love sharing these stories because I hope listeners are, who maybe aren't in Mops or Sops, like are understanding, oh, hey, this is something I can get into. But it's something that I think we all need to spread the word about, because so much for folks coming into the workspace, they just don't know, you just don't know that it exists. So yeah, I love hearing those stories. Well, to get into it, to the meat of it, I just want to first ask, why is the partnership between Mops and Sops so important for the business?
Yeah, that's maybe my favorite question already, because I love this partnership, and I think this is at the core of the business. I like to think that this relationship is the revenue engine, because we are the ones enabling sales, marketing, CX to build relationship with customers. We can get all the teams on the same page, and we do so. We have many different ways. We provide the data at their fingertips. Doris and I often chat about, new fields or pick list values, what to display on a page layout, where to build an integration, or do we need an integration, reports and dashboards that make sense and also that keep us honest in our work. So we are the guardians of the data, of the reporting, of the insights. We know where is the source of truth and how to action the data to make the decisions. Do we do more of a campaign, or do we increase the time someone sits on a cadence? We can answer these questions. And I also think we are very well equipped to develop that path to revenue by looking at the data, by forecasting, building the processes for go-to-market. We can basically set the direction for the business. I recently read a quote from Forrester that tells about businesses that align their revenue engines grow 15 times much faster than the ones who don't. And at Alma, we definitely experience a lot of growth And I like to believe that it's also fueled by our partnership.
Yeah, I love that. I agree because I think when you like one of the biggest pain points, like when you see the lack of alignment, it's just there's so much wasted time and effort and lack of visibility and people not working toward a common goal. And it would be like if you were on like a two-person kayak and one of them's like paddling one way and the other one's going the other way, like you're not going to go anywhere, right? So having both of those teams be aligned to really get that boat, the kayak, like the revenue team moving forward is super important. But we do see a lot of the times that, it may not be in place. So, you know, how can this improve or maybe hinder companies if they don't have the partnership? Maybe I'll hear from you, Doris.
Yeah. So I think like aligning the growth or the revenue engine, it needs both Mops and Sops to create those conditions to help us grow and also retain our revenue. And with the two teams, we work with so many different stakeholders, like Veronica mentioned, growth marketing, demand generation, sales, and even the post-sales team.
Mm-hmm.
And when we don't work well together, yeah, there are a lot of pain points there. One being there's more hacky solutions to solve for team
Mm-hmm.
specific needs. If we're not getting support from the mop side on the SOP side, we have to just work within the constraints of the sales team to develop a hacky solution that might have just been better if we involved and had alignment with the MOPS
Mm-hmm.
team. So increased technical depth
Mm-hmm.
there.
Yeah.
Then Then there's also a lot of time spent planning and resolving conflicting priorities, like having to quote unquote like fight for your initiative and also make sure that there's enough resources allocated to whichever project is a higher priority. There's Without that alignment, there's just so much more time resolving some of those conflicting things that might come through.
Yeah, I
And
like that you mentioned tech debt because we do have a past podcast that talks about that. But like the hacky solution, because you talk about sales within, but that happens to marketing ops a lot as well, right? Where they have just their market
mhm.
automation platform, but really there could be a lot of things done on the other side. So like inversely, both teams end up hacking together some solutions because they just can't rely on each other. But sorry, I'll let you finish your third piece.
No, it's exactly that. I think, having to be able to pull in marketing ops, like, hey, how can we think about this problem more holistically and figure out like where that process and where that implementation needs to live. It's so helpful for us to kind of come up with the best possible solution within our company's constraint. And yeah, the last piece I want to mention was another pain point is that when there are silos with the SOPs and MOPS team, it results in those unintended downstream effects. Like I make one change into our CRM and I don't tell the MOPS team. MOPS is like, what happened? And when there are those silos, there's a little bit more of those surprise factors that we just want to minimize for sure.
Yeah. You do lose trust, right? Too. And it just becomes like and it feels like it's always at like on Friday at 3 p.m. or something, and you're like, no, like my weekend. And you're spent like fixing it. And so like having that communication, I think is totally key. One thing I wanted to ask, like, do you both report into a RevOps function, and do you think that's like necessary to have this kind of alignment?
I think I'll start with a hot take on this question. So I think that a good working relationship is better than any organizational chart or plan on paper. I was part of RevOps teams and worked in complete misalignment with sales ops. It had to do a lot with planning and goal setting, where RevOps was hyper focused in supporting the sales org, and then that took first seat always. this meant that marketing maybe had to wait 4 weeks on a new field in CRM, and the projects were maybe reprioritized on and on. That is not meant to say that working in a traditional setup is better. That can also be working in a silo. But we are not part of RevOps at the moment. We report into different departments. I report into marketing. Doris reports into the growth function. What we do have is good collaboration, and we have the pulse on the workload for both Mops and Sops.
I would completely agree. I think some organizations may benefit from alignment to a RevOps function. Maybe they need help aligning, prioritizing, or like resolving some of those conflicts. But if there is that foundation of like good collaboration and that we're able to plan together to align on those key goals and key priorities, it really doesn't matter on how we organize a team as long as we're able to come together, collaborate to achieve our goals.
How often are you, both of your teams, meeting, like to just give each other updates and talk about your priorities? Just wondering, because I think that plays a big role too, where people think alignment just happens through like asynchronous communication, or some people just throwing up, sending out an email, hey, we did this thing, but that's not real true alignment. How are you both kind of working together, or how often are you meeting?
So we meet every week. We set aside about 45 minutes to talk about new initiatives, to talk about progress. And maybe our favorite part is to troubleshoot together. Like, here's what I see in Marketo. Here's what I see in Salesforce. Let's troubleshoot it. Let's give a solution. Let's close this ticket. And that's incredibly helpful because none of the functions are an afterthought. We make like that intentional effort to be inclusive of each other's work and time to help solve a problem or a project.
Yeah. I think it's a good, I mean, this is a good example too, because you both are 6 hours apart and you're still making it work. You're still meeting weekly, and you still find the time to stay aligned. So I just wanted to make that note, because I think a lot of teams will kind of, have this like, oh, it's so much work, but really it's so much work to be misaligned, to like not have the collaboration. Also, you can leverage each other's skills so much more to just get one project. It's very rare you have a project where it's not touching your CRM, your market automation platform, a sales engagement tool. So it's so much work and so much harder to get things done. On the same note, Veronica, and then Doris, you can add on too, but how do you manage the planning and road mapping across your teams? Like when you go into really taking on a big project, like how do you decide what goes on to each of your team's roadmap, or is it a shared roadmap?
Yeah, so we work in a close partnership with marketing and sales. And I think the key for us is early visibility and involvement in planning. Throughout the quarter, we do hear of projects that the team wants to work on. We are aware what is coming. I don't think anything is a surprise or, getting our pulse up. We are invited into department planning. And then I think our role is to really identify dependencies. So as soon as we have a list of projects from leadership, we meet, and maybe that takes 2 hours if it's a quarterly plan, to just run this exercise of what do we need to make this project successful. Do we need a field, or do we need an object? Do we need an integration, or maybe just a formula field? So all these are questions that we are answering. Maybe the leadership is not, thinking about these things. And then there's, items on our list that probably are not on the radar. Maybe for me it's database cleaning in Marketo. Maybe for Doris is moving some workflows to flows. So we need to get those, we need to get those on the list too. So Of course, then we always give feedback to our teams in terms of sizing the dependency and bandwidth and so on. I would say that we also prioritize, identify, what is business crucial and what is nice to have, and we keep that in mind when we tackle projects. And one thing that maybe helps us a lot is using the same project management tool. So we use Asana, and we both have a board. So there's a Sops board and a Mops board with a form attached to
Oh, I
it.
love that.
And when we work, yeah, and we have visibility on each other's boards, and we know what's coming. And when we work on a project together, then we can just, mirror the card, and we keep that information
Yeah.
centralized.
For you, Doris, because I know you're on the sales ops side, and that sometimes can be a little bit unique for your stakeholders because you also have sales that you're working with or heads of sales. Like for your process, like do you also then send people to your form in Asana and they go and put a request? Is that a bit harder to get people to stick to that process than maybe Veronica has with marketers or maybe used to a similar process before?
Yeah, for sure. I think we're a lot of our sales reps, if they come from companies from all different shapes and sizes. Some prefer the whole Slack, hey, Salesforce is down. What is up? But definitely leveraging Asana for most of the requests that do come in, so that I can better keep track and keep organized of what things I need to escalate, what have we worked on. But there are those occasional Slack messages that do come in, and luckily there's a integration between Slack and Asana, so I convert those into tasks, so I'm able to better manage. And especially with a growing sales ops team, like we are planning to hire more, it's faster that way to make sure that there is more adoption of the Asana tool that we use, so that and the why is that we're able to address their tickets and concerns more quickly, since they're reaching out to a broader group of
Yeah,
people.
I love that. That's great. I mean, I'm sure Veronica, you get a bunch of Slacks as well, but no one is immune from getting the messages from every angle from the teams that you support, I'm sure. But I love that you also both have visibility into each other's boards and collaborating in kind of one area, because I think also a project management tool like Asana or ClickUp or anything that you're using can also be a great history of like a change log. What happened last quarter or how many tickets did we complete? And you can actually see like productivity of, okay, your start date, your end date, like you could see how long things took. But so, because I think for small teams, for things like documentation or even just a simple thing as like a change log, which are probably good to have even separate from your collaboration tool, but it can almost operate as that history instead of creating more admin for teams, which can be really tough. I want to talk about alignment. So how do both teams help align marketing and sales like through technology? So I'll let you start, Doris.
Yeah, I'll maybe tackle this question in a more broad perspective. I think even just starting from like even selecting the tool. So like our approach at Alma is that we like to use like the best in class tools for whatever purpose we are needing to find a solution for. And we definitely consolidate where it makes sense, but we are not afraid of just introducing a new tool into our tech stack. And the main reason for this is that we want to move faster. We want to find tools that are like more effective and also take advantage of any new innovations in that technology space. So we have a large tech stack to manage. So it's super important for the owners of that tech stack to align with each other, so that we are able to align with the marketing and sales teams. And like in vendor selection, that might look like we're both reviewing the RFPs and the technical documentation to ensure that the use cases that our stakeholders are looking to build out for can be met. And by having like Veronica's brain and my brain together, we can read and review those capabilities and do some high level solutioning so that we can see and sign off on new tools. So like, for example, we had this new tool that we wanted to evaluate where we're managing the community of our Alma membership. So we were both pulled in to evaluate like how can this proposed tool work with our existing tech stack and solve certain use cases, such as being able to send emails out if so and so has not logged in into the community tool or has not engaged in that community tool. So we're able to do that review and that quick solutioning to say like, hey, if they go through Marketo and then they go through Salesforce and then they go through this tool, we will be able to solve for that use case. We also collaborate and align where it comes to tool implementation. So it's like working together to design a more comprehensive solution to figure out like, hey, should this live in the market? Should this integrate with the Marketo or should this integrate with Salesforce? And we're able to design a very comprehensive solution because we're coming from and have expertise on both sides of the business. Veronica is bringing her marketing experience and like saying this will impact her teams in that way. I'm bringing the sales experience where I'm like, this would impact the sales team in this way. And together we work together to figure out a comprehensive solution that takes into account the various scenarios that might be impacting both teams. And again, with both of ours tech stack together, we're able to better solution design and have those like less hacky solutions. And an example of this is that we were about to launch this new referral tool. We initially planned for it to integrate with Salesforce, but that integration didn't work. So we had to shift gears, and luckily Marketo's integration with that tool worked well. So that we're able to just quickly troubleshoot and change paths if needed.
That's great. Anything? Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Veronica. I was going to ask you. Did you want to add anything?
Yeah, that was actually a very good example. I think that Doris in general helps a ton with sales enablement via marketing data. Just an example I have is she always advocates for Marketo Sales Insights usage. Actually, we love MSI at Alma. Doris is helping with coaching the sales team how to use it, what data points to look at, and increasing that piece for us. Thank you, Doris.
Every Mops person on here is like, where can I find a Doris?
No, Veronica is
for both of you. I think they're like, wow, look at this. Yeah, I love that we can talk about a power couple because it's just so complimentary for both of you. And I think you want to have that support, right? It's like all the time you're like, I need to have a champion on the sales side, or I need to have a champion on the marketing side. Like we need to work more closely together. But you both are really looking at things like holistically together, but also knowing that, okay, Veronica's, implementation of XYZ, I'm putting these insights to sales into MSI. Well, that's not going to be useful unless someone's actually still reiterating, like, this is how you use it and this is why it's important. And when you already have the relationship with sales, you can push that through so much easier. And so I think a lot of teams will just be like, well, that's your thing. This is my thing. We'll kind of just like do it. But when it comes to enablement, I think even figuring out which teams can just support on the enablement as a shared goal, as a shared, responsibility is great. Like it just feels like you just have so much more support in making whatever you're doing successful. One thing I want to talk about, well, the next thing, I think this is a tricky topic for a lot of our clients too. It's where we do a lot of work recently is around building some analytics frameworks for the revenue team, because so many times teams are looking at different sets of data, the wrong data, they're like misaligned. So how do both teams support the analytics framework across the revenue team?
Yeah, I would say specifically for the sales and marketing teams, we care the most about the sales funnel. And for us, it's the path from a lead to executing a contract with the mental health provider. And because of that data is coming from various sources, our like the Mops and Sops team owns all of that data together because there are instances where, let's say for our lead data, Mops manages our inbound lead data primarily, and then our Sops team, we're managing some of the outbound lead data. MQLs are owned by Mops, and then opportunity management is owned by Sops. So like together, we puzzle and piece together the full sales funnel. But in our instance, like what we try to do is that at least for the sales funnel, we try to have that in one central location. And for our purposes, it's in Salesforce. So by having the entire sales funnel in Salesforce, we're able to provide that data liquidity so that anyone is able to run that data. And we acknowledge like which one is the source of truth so that if there are any discrepancies, yes, we'll investigate. And we're not saying like, hey, Salesforce is right or like when Marketo is right. It's more like the conversation is more about, okay, why was there a data gap?
When it comes to your reporting, what reporting do both teams look at? And then I know you have your reports in Salesforce, especially on the sales funnel, but what reporting are both teams looking at? And then do you give these insights to like the full revenue team or just certain departments? Like how does that look right now?
Yeah. So from a day-to-day reporting and monitoring, like I mentioned, the sales funnel, and we want everyone to have that data on the sales funnel. We're not limiting it so that it's only for like we're piecing certain parts of that data and only sharing it with specific teams. We want everyone to have this data so that they are thinking more holistically and so that they're more aligned to the main goal, which is to drive revenue. I have a past experience where I was working with a marketing team, and their OKR was the number of increasing the number of MQLs, and they were very razor focused on that goal, and sometimes at the expense of quality. So then they may be bringing in a large volume of MQLs, but they're certainly not converting as much. For Alma, like our marketing team, like they do monitor MQL volume as well as lead volume, but they're completely fine to like miss the MQL target if maybe we are converting more deals and closing more opportunities. So I think having that metrics be available to everyone, it starts to build that muscle on how to review those metrics more holistically and align it to the ultimate company goal, which is to create more revenue.
Yeah, and I would add that one thing that I really love and Doris works on a lot is the monthly business review, which is like a breakdown of the goals for the month, how far we are, and then this is shared with the leadership, with marketing and sales, and everyone has access. And then in terms of more specific reporting on the marketing side, we keep a close eye on our database. That's our, treasure. So we report on the growth, on the volume of emails, bounce, unsubscribes, all the fun stuff. And then this report is shared with our marketing, but also with Doris. And there's a lot of value in getting her eyes on that and identifying trends and answering questions.
Yeah, I love that. I like that, Doris. You mentioned the marketing team, like and a whole revenue team looking at revenue. Because I agree with you. I think that we always say like what gets measured gets managed. So like if it's okay to have an MQL goal in mind. It's okay to see that data as leading indicators. But you're right, when those teams are just like, here's your goal, it's MQLs, and then you look to sales like, here's your goal, it's opportunities for SDRs and for sales, it's, revenue. It becomes like so disjointed because at the end of the day, the thing that drives the business is revenue, right? And so the when you'll just create behaviors in some cases that are just like moving toward these disjointed goals, which then creates lack of alignment again. So when hearing that but like your teams are looking at the same numbers, the same dashboard for the health of the business, and then reviewing those monthly and having that come from like a central source, I think is super important. That's something that I did before when I worked in house back in the day. But then take some of those insights now to clients to say like what value it can bring, and just having that shared goal or shared way of tracking things can then create alignment from the leadership level, which then can create alignment between their sub teams. So I think people underestimate how important just even goals are to keeping folks aligned. So I know both of you support the different sales machines. So from an inbound perspective and outbound sales, how do you split the responsibilities of things like lead flow or lead routing, tracking the handoffs and sales process? Like, because sometimes marketing ops can kind of own a big chunk of that, but then sales ops, might take everything from opportunity on. How do you both handle that at Alma?
Yeah. Well, as a general rule of thumb, like we try not to do it from processes, and I'll explain why in a bit. We primarily split the responsibilities by like which technologies are influenced or are impacted by that process. So, like if the responsibility might involve tools that we both manage, then we collaborate. If it's only like on the Marketo side or only on the Salesforce side, then we will work on it respectively. So the reason why we don't do it by processes is that we all, as a growing company, we introduce new processes, and sometimes processes can be a little bit messy. And having it be split across by certain processes, there's just going to be a greater need for more documentation so that we have those explicit alignment of roles and responsibilities. Whereas if we organize by technology, it's like, I know that when I'm doing this initiative, I'll need to pull in Mops for this segment of it, and vice versa.
For something like, say there's a lead routing request or something, and or you're going to operationalize like, a field for like a lead flow, like how does that kind of like work today? So like Veronica, if you're getting something maybe from the marketing side, but then it really impacts kind of Doris on the Salesforce side, or maybe both, like, do you just kind of meet immediately to talk through like what needs to be done? Like how do you kind of handle when that, comes up? Do you solution together? Just want to kind of paint a picture for folks of like a real example of day to day, like how you would tackle something like that.
Yeah, definitely. So if there's...
So I mean, one example could be, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Doris.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Vero.
I think if it's a business critical, so something that stops the business from going, like maybe the form's not working, leads not coming through to sales, we would definitely ping each other, and if it's a major problem, we would jump on a call. We both are trained in each other's system, so I am Salesforce certified. I can, find my way in Salesforce, find out if there's something, and I go to Doris with a specific problem if I find it. My goal is to make her job easier. That's how I see it. And Doris can log into Marketo. She knows where to find processes. She can read the activity log, which is a treasure for us in marketing ops. We have that activity log that points us to problems. And I know Doris can also access from MSI. So as she's a champion of Marketo Sales Insights, she knows where to look to find Marketo data. So I think it's working pretty well, even if there's a fire, and we're not that busy with fires, I would say.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll add on that. Yeah, I think when it comes to firefighting, which we often do, we have to really think about like which ones is a true fire and which one is not. If it's a true fire and one that needs both of our attention, then like yes, we'll get together and solve for it. But if it's something that can wait, we do it through the typical processes, through our Asana boards and whatnot, and it's clear where
Mm-hmm.
and who owns what part of that problem, like for or that request. Like for example, if it's routing our MQLs to our inbound BDRs to our AEs, for Veronica, she's
Mm.
making sure that there's updates to that record to ensure that there is that proper handoff. We know what campaigns they are a part of, and that takes place in Marketo. So Vero owns that side of it. And then it's my team's responsibility to then route it to the inbound BDR or the AE. And because I manage those processes in
Mm.
Salesforce and Chili Piper, which
Yeah.
is another sales
Cool.
tool that
Thanks
we
for
use.
adding that. I think that paints like a good picture for folks. So one thing I love to ask guests is what people are doing wrong when it comes to the topic. So what do you think orgs are doing wrong when it comes to Mops and Sops working closely together or staying aligned?
Yeah, I think we mentioned quite a few, and I think there are many sources of Mops memes you see around from all these things that can go wrong. One that I see often is planning in a silo,
Mm.
so not having no roadmap visibility, not sharing the items between teams, or having that dependency scoping that I talked about earlier. Um, I also been involved personally with duplicating work, so I was looking for a dupe tool to solve for the marketing dupes, and my later on I found sales ops were looking at dupe tools to find to solve the CRM dupes. So definitely wasting time there. And then, visibility issues. I hear about teams working in different project management tools. So, how do you do a handoff? How do you transfer that data? Um, and maybe the biggest one would be what Doris talked about, having different KPIs or maybe conflicting goals, measuring that volume of MQLs for marketing and sales has another goal. Um, yeah, I would say that not having SLAs is also a big issue that I see, or including each other in that SLA. So if I have a request, I know that Doris needs time to maybe build a field or give me a report that I need for my project. And single source of truth, another one that it's creating a lot of work. Like we're looking at different numbers. I see success, you see failure. Then how do you find what's the number? What do you give to the board if you see different conflicting information? And maybe we didn't talk that much about documentation, but I think that's a big one too. So if we invest the time, and we do because we have marketing playbooks and sales playbook, then we help our teams, and not doing that is definitely creating chaos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Documentation is key. It's like one of the hardest things for people to do and manage and maintain. And it's can be a bit of a pain, but it's so useful. Like, and not only for your the teams now, but your future self, training, onboarding, like it's just so useful. But sharing the documentation or making sure that it's enabled the right way across the teams, I think, is super important. Well, we have a few minutes left, and then maybe just any final piece of advice that we didn't talk through.
I maybe just want to hammer home. I think one of the keys to our great collaboration is that we understand each other's side of the business, it's not that we need to have a full understanding. Like I don't understand everything that Veronica does in Marketo. It'll take me years, but and Veronica might not understand all the different actions that might happen on the sales side. But it's like having a good enough understanding, and having that and gaining that understanding, it could be fun and interesting. Like I bet any Sops person would find it interesting in learning about the Mops side of the world, and vice versa, because there are just similar problem sets there.
Yeah, I think for me, it's really like you said, Chrissy, taking the time to invest in the relationship, getting on the weekly call, troubleshooting together, work through the tickets. There's a lot of value in teaming up to solve problems and brainstorm too. And I mentioned that I'm CRM certified, and I did this a few years back, and it was a great investment to understand that extension to the marketing data. And I really enjoy, going into CRM and going to Doris with specific examples and sharing with her what I find, and I know then it's helpful from there on. She's the expert. So anyone who's in marketing ops, I think, would benefit from getting CRM certified.
I think that's a good point, because I think even, if your CRM is Salesforce or HubSpot, there's even just a lot of training and documentation out there. So if you don't want to do the full admin cert on each side, right? Or like HubSpot and Marketo is a little bit harder to get certified for whatever reasons, but if you're working at a company with it, you can get it. But doing kind of like even some trailheads and, on the lead and contact, opportunity, object, account, like as a Mops person. So you're just kind of, comfortable and familiar with what can can be done. Or you mentioned flows, right? Like Salesforce is moving away from workflows and process builder and stuff like that. So flows open up a world of, things that you can do in a very less resource heavy way than I think some other stuff. So that could even be a place to look at. And it just makes your request to the other team just make more sense, right? Like you have like an idea of what really can be done before you even go to them. And then vice versa. So staying interested in the complementary tools or the roles and responsibilities, I think, is important. It might open up an opportunity for a different role one day, right? You might work within both or lead a team of both. Like say you do want to go into revenue ops and lead a revenue ops team. So it's just staying curious, staying kind of trained on both sides, I think is super important. And I bet you both learn from each other a lot every day, which is also dual benefit of having that alignment.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for being on the podcast. We'll be sharing Doris and Veronica's LinkedIn profiles, so you can go and connect with them. And if you have a question about anything that they said on the podcast, go there and connect. I'm sure they don't mind having a message, although I apologize if you get too many messages. But this was so informative. I loved this episode. I thought it was so great. So if you have anyone on your team or colleague or friend that would be interested, please share this episode of Forward Thinking. And if you're enjoying the podcast, feel free to leave us a review. We really appreciate it. So thank you so much, everyone. And we'll see you next time on Forward Thinking. Thanks.